Greetings and welcome to Mount Olympus. I am Hercules Invictus, and today we have a crossover episode. We have Lions of Olympus and Pride of Olympus, and they do belong together. And this year, one of my goals is to mesh the two activities into one larger activity. And we have with us the Chandlers, Tina and Brian, and we have Pam also, who is here. And Miss Fernsler has had an interesting week, and hopefully she'll share it with us on the show. How's everything down south, Tina and Brian?
Roasting.
The
Yeah,
same?
a little warm down here.
Yeah, here it was rainy today. And yesterday we had extreme thunder showers. They said we were going to have several of them, but we only had one of them. And it sounded phenomenally impressive. It sounded almost mythic, the thunder. So I felt very much at home.
Yeah, it hasn't rained here in a couple of days, but it's been like 94 or 95 degrees, and they said the heat X is anywhere from 101 to 110, depending on where you are.
Oh, wow.
Ouch.
So it's a little warm.
Yeah, when I went down south, when I was doing the Star Trek stuff, I went down to Florida a few times because we had a convention business. So we would travel around. And as soon as I got off the bus, the first time I went down there, all my moisture was sucked out by the atmosphere.
Mm-hmm.
And I couldn't wait to get in to where I'd be staying because it was air conditioned. And I learned that people down there live with air conditioning, during these like really humid months. And the second time we were in a city and it was a little further north, and we went by car. And there too, as soon as we exited the air conditioning of the car, all the moisture was sucked out of us by the air. So you guys are very hardy to be able to tolerate the humidity down there.
Well, I don't know about even tolerating it. It's really overriding our air conditioners. I mean, we all pray to St. Carrier every day down here.
So last time we had this particular conversation, folks said that they would look into certain things with lions and science fiction. Has anyone done that for this time, or should we wait till next time for that? Tina?
Tell the truth, I've been trying to get our youngest through the last few weeks of middle school. He did pass with five teeth, but we got him through it. So unfortunately, I'm very sorry.
No, don't worry about it. We had time. This conversation will be going on for quite a while, hopefully. Brian,
Okay.
do you have a chance?
I did not know.
Okay, so onward to the next item of the agenda. I used to have a show where I talked to interesting people who were doing interesting things about how they, did these interesting things. And I interviewed Tina when she was a roller derby queen. So I want to bring that show back again. So I'm going to ask Tina to talk about being a roller derby queen. I'm going to talk to you about owning a comic book shop, because for a lot of fans, that's like the ultimate fantasy. I got to live out my fantasy when we had the Barbarian Bazaar in northeastern Pennsylvania, and we sold games and comics and video games and computer games and toys. And we had like a room in the back where I used to alternate giving occult lectures and also running role-playing games, for kids and for adults in the back. So didn't make a lot of money, but it was like a fantasy come true. And I'm glad I got to live that out for a few years. I got it out of my system. But I love comic book stores, so I can't wait to hear your tale of what inspired you and how you started and so forth. Would you guys be interested in being interviewed?
Sure.
Okay,
Yes.
so we will schedule that and we'll aim for next month sometime. And Pamela,
Okay.
you're a phenomenally interesting person. I don't know very much about your professional life, but I do know about your metaphysical life. What did you do professionally for much of your time here?
Who, me?
Yes,
Oh, I'm retired.
I'm retired too.
But I used to work for the fire department of Philadelphia in their headquarters.
Is a fire person?
No, unfortunately not. I'm a little too old for that. I started in 1999 when I was 49 years old. So I was one of the desk jockeys. I managed data and did reports and stuff like that. sat on my keister a lot of the day.
Okay, but your metaphysical life is phenomenal. You belong to several mystery schools, including the Rosicrucians, where you're a prominent member. And we've had some conversations where you have spewed forth information that somebody really had to dedicate themselves to getting and putting these puzzle pieces together. So I'm very impressed by your background and knowledge. So would you like to be interviewed as an occultist?
Yeah, I guess it could be. Most of my mystery schools started with very basic ones that I found in the back of esoteric magazines, you know, little 1/4-inch columns. And so I'd write to them and they say, okay, here's some lessons, study these. And they give me a little code name. And by the time I was inducted into AMORC, I had gone through 2 mystery schools online. Well, correspondence, I shouldn't say online because we didn't have that then. That was back in the mid-70s.
I remember the days of writing letters.
Yes, yes. And after AMORC, and also along with it, the Rosicrucian Fellowship. And since then, 2 more, I should say Christian mystic orders, because they're very different from the Christian religion. Very different. You learn a lot more about what was really meant and get some ideas about the hidden interpretations, both in the Old Testament and the New Testament. And the last one I belong to is pretty much still belong to. I was studying to be a teacher of that, and that was the Ascension Mysteries of the I Am organizations.
Do you guys know about the I Am organizations or the Rosicrucians? I know you're both metaphysically inclined as well. So I guess let's explore that a little bit more and see if you guys want to be interviewed about your metaphysical activities as well. I'm very open about everything I do, so I'm involved with my town, and everyone knows that I'm a mythic person and that I investigate weird things, and everyone seems okay with it because I don't beat people over the head with it, and it doesn't matter if anybody believes it or not. This is something I'm doing to explore. But some people don't feel comfortable sharing the metaphysical aspects of their lives. Would you guys care to elaborate a little bit on the metaphysics that you're involved with, and would you be interested in being interviewed?
Oh, I was a member of the MR for a while as well. My mother was a teacher and she's really deep into the things from Christianity and other branch off of the esoteric Christianity. And I think there was a lot learning more about the MR as well. But that'd be a lot of
Hey, thank you. Brian, how about you?
Well, Tim inclined than I am, so she'd be the one to talk to for that. I could throw my 2 cents in. Yeah, I could throw my 2 cents in, but her knowledge kind of dwarfs mine when it comes to things like that.
But your 2 cents is worth a lot because you're a fountain full of information. So your 2 cents might be somebody else's encyclopedic knowledge.
Well, I can try is all I can say.
Okay. The other interviews that I'm setting up is to build up the lines of Olympus. I'm starting with people who are cat people. And
Yay, me, I'm cat people.
and are helping cats out beyond sharing a house with cats and having cats in the family. Some people volunteer or do, other type of work with animals. So I'm focusing on that first, as well as on people who love cats, because I'd like that to be part of the Lions of Olympus. And over the years, I made friends with a lot of people, like the head of the Cougar Fund, and not the cougars that are older women who are interested in younger men, but like mountain lions.
Oh,
So they do a lot of work to preserve the habitat of the mountain lions and to help out mountain lions. So I'm invite her to be on the show again. She was on the show years ago when I was interviewing Tina about being a roller derby queen. She was around the same time. So she butt dialed me by mistake. I guess it's like almost a year ago now, but we had a long conversation. So I told her I'd invite her back to interview her. So time has passed, but I will invite her back because she's an awesome individual. So I want to have balance, like a love for cats, and cats are in our lives with what do you call, we're doing something in the community or on the planet to help cats who deserve to exist here as we deserve to exist here. So since you're all cat people, what angle would you like to take on that? And we'll start with Brian.
As far as cats, I don't. They seem to like me well enough, and I was never a cat person up until probably what 15 years ago.
I think so.
And now it's like, okay, that's all there is cats. So
I was never a dog person, but we have dogs now, so I love the dogs, but I'm still not really a dog person.
yeah, I always had dogs growing up. My mom hated cats, just absolutely hated cats, and it was always dogs of one way, shape, or form. And then we started getting these ones that were the outdoor cats that were kittens that just kind of showed up on our doorstep and migrated in the house, and it kind of went from there.
And Tina, how about you?
Always had cats. There's only been a very few times we've had dogs in the family. When we lived out in the country, my dad always had impressed upon us about cat colony.
The echoes are getting really bad, Tina.
Oh,
I can catch like maybe 2 out of 3 words.
Hang
I'm
on,
sorry.
hang on. Let me mute me for a second, or try to figure out how to mute me here.
Okay.
Tap the mic.
That's what I'm trying to do, but it's not cooperating. Give me a second.
Technology's glitchy, and I don't feel bad about it anymore because I see professional things on YouTube with like from television networks, and they're glitchy all the time. So I don't. So it's like the glitches are part of the experience.
Yeah. Okay, let's see if this works now.
That's 100% better.
Okay. When we were growing up,
Thanks,
we had a chicken farm. Sorry, Lita. And my dad always impressed us the importance of having healthy cat colonies around farms.
Mhm.
And we've always grown up, how always had cats around us, inside, outside, whatever. We moved into town, we stopped having cats for a while, and it wasn't until about 15 years ago or so that we started having cats in the house again. And all our cats that we have are rescues, and trying to nurture a healthy cat colony outdoors as well. I like to put up, I think something that would be cool would be putting up signs in neighborhoods, watch for cats, so people are not just driving and just run over the cats and, not only the other animals, but it seems like the dogs pretty much know how to stay out of the road, but the cats, they're always crossing the roads and everything, and we're always watching out for them. So
So your cats are very much a part of your reality then, and a positive part of your reality. So I will interview you about that. And I don't know if you're aware of like Michelle Brittany and Nick Dyack, the scholars from the Edge of Time. They have a show on the channel, and Michelle used to volunteer in like a cat shelter near her. So I'm going to talk to her about that. Pam, how about you?
Okay, since 2016, I had been working with paws and with trap and neuter and release as a colony. And some of them were really not feral, and I helped rehome about half a dozen of those. So also, the cats in the neighborhood seem to understand what I say to them. It seems I'm a cat whisperer, something I inherited from my mother, who my favorite story about my mom and the cats is that when we were living in the mountains in Fayetteville, Pennsylvania, she went outside and she noticed a cat at the edge of the forest, and she just clicked it over, the tongue clicking, and it came over to her. It turned out it was a wild bobcat, and it just came right up to her and let it pet her and stuff like that. It's like, so something I inherited from my mom. Plus, I like the lions on Pern and these other, the lion people that Larry Niven created. Those are fascinating. He created a whole whole culture of lions and
The
cats.
Zinti, right?
Larry Niven,
Yes, he created the Zinti,
yes,
series, the
which,
Manxin Wars. They weren't. We've talked about that in the past.
yeah, they also had on Star Trek, I think in the
Yes,
animated series.
and also in one of the newer series. Brian,
Right.
what the other series that the Zinti appeared on?
I think it was Voyager.
Voyager.
Yeah,
There was actually a mention of them recently in Discovery.
cool.
Season 5.
They're cats,
Right.
of course.
So why wouldn't they be in outer space with us?
Absolutely.
And Bob mentioned that his Starfleet, one of his Starfleet organizations, they have you you make your pets into Starfleet officers.
Some of them did, yes.
True.
There was a couple on Sovereign, Tigger and Winnie.
Now, I've met in my journeys incarnate space cats. People who remember space cat incarnations. And Murray Hope, who's an occultist whose writings I happen to like, she revealed toward the end of her writing career, and I guess toward the end of her life, that she was an incarnate cat person. Are there any incarnate cat people on the Sovereign?
Um, just our commander. She's Commander Shiandera from Kate, Cait. So that's her persona.
Okay, but does she believe that she was a cat and she's incarnate among humanity?
No, she does not, as far as I know.
Yeah, I'd like to. I did a show on that years ago. I'd like to do a show on that again. We've had gnomes on the show and elves and all sorts of people who were incarnate elementals or incarnate folklore entities or incarnate other planetary entities. So those are interesting conversations. You okay?
Excuse me, I'm sorry.
Okay. Are you okay?
Oh, our boys are squabbling.
Oh, okay. Do you need to go away for a little while or?
No, we're good, thanks.
Okay. Now, one of the things I wanted to talk about today was Stargate. Are you guys fans of Stargate?
Oh, yes.
Oh yeah.
Which incarnation of Stargate do you like the best?
Oh my gosh. All of it?
All of it? I like all of it too. Brian, how about you?
I'd watch it all.
And Pam?
I was especially drawn to the Egyptians that they discovered, but the one that really got my attention was Stargate Atlantis,
Okay.
because I had 7 lives at least in Atlantis. So I wondered, how did they, how close did they come to it? From what I remember, they were sort of halfway there, but all they had was archaeological stuff to go on. They didn't have lives there like I did.
Yeah, you shared some of those lives with Diana Monkford, she told me.
Yes, yes, I did. Would you like to know any of them?
If you care to share them, some of the past lives that I remember were in pre-dynastic Egypt.
The live I had in Atlantis was a dedication to their library, and it was very vast. The walls, they were sort of white midway up, and down below they looked like shining brass. And there were tens of thousands of documents, all of probably which have been lost at this point. But there is still a hideout in South America
In
that I
the
read about through one of my I Am books.
Yes, I have that I Am book. It's by Hunt Williamson.
No,
No, it's not, because
no, not,
he wrote about the Brotherhood in the Andes, and then people based a lot of the writings that came out afterwards on what he had said in Secret Places of the Lion, the book was called.
no. This is one that was handed down to me secondhand, and it had a note written in it that seemed like it was for me, but it was written for another person. back in 1924. And it was by Godfrey Ray King,
Oh, okay.
one of the starters or activators of the IM movement.
He started the IM movement in Mount Shasta with Saint Germain.
Right. And a few others.
Yeah, as you know, I'm fascinated by modern beliefs and modern mythology, because a lot of what we call conspiracy theories or occult theories, that's our modern mythology, that's our modern folklore. And years from now, it'll be what people find in textbooks is, like when we look back on folklore, it's usually about elves and dwarves and things like that, and that's what makes it into our entertainment. These archetypes make it into our entertainment as well, and I feel they're very important because that's what the mass mind is producing and what it's entertaining. And I've met sorcerers who also keep a very close eye on pop culture, for the patterns that emerge in pop culture.
Were you aware there's a fairy circle in Washington, D.C.?
No, I don't. I've only been there twice for short periods.
It's near the Smithsonian.
Why am I not surprised?
Yeah, there was evidence of it there. One of those things that the Rosicrucian Fellowship teaches you about, how to identify things like that.
And also we talked about Merkabas and how I'm doing stuff with Merkabas. Do you guys want to be invited to the Merkaba stuff? It's by Zoom. Some of it's in my house, so I can't invite you, because you don't live nearby. Although I wish you did. I'd love to sit down for coffee when I'm back on coffee after the lion diet. Because you're very interesting people and we've known each other for a very long time. But alas. And
What's the Merkaba?
Merkaba. Merkabas are ancient UFOs.
Oh,
Rabbis, it's a meditative technique that rabbis do, and it takes them to places they call Hekalot or palaces, which are dimensions or planets ruled by different types of angels or celestial beings. And one of the interesting things is that instead of ascending, they describe it as descending, which isn't that far off. When you meditate deeply and you do astral projection or lucid dreaming, it does feel as much as like a descent as it does an ascent. So they describe, it as a descent in the literature. And I've always found it fascinating. And there's a lot of modern stuff written. A lot of it seems to be fairly recent, but some of the older stuff's available in books and online. So I'm taking people on Merkaba journeys, and they're astral. So the astral is imagination and dreams and so forth. So a lot of pop cultural imagery sneaks into that. And in my UFO Entity Enigma show, which you've been on, there we look at it very carefully, and we're looking at how pop culture affects folklore, which are like UFO encounters. Because like with the reptilians, which are very popular now among the UFO crowd, a lot of what they're saying came from the old science fiction TV show.
I remember that.
And also
That was-
Robert Howard's Conan, who met the serpent people. There's a lot of stuff there about how they could shapeshift and so forth, and Lovecraft himself. So a lot of that stuff that popped up in the pulps and on television is part of the UFO lore on the reptilians today that people are taking.
Not to forget Doctor Who.
I'm not a big Doctor. I've watched a lot of Doctor Who, but I'm not a big Doctor Who fan. I have crates of episodes that I've seen, but
They have ancient reptilians on there.
oh, okay. I got to look them up now again. And Brian, you were about to say something?
Oh, just about V. I was always a big V fan, so I watched the two mini series. I watched the regular TV series. I've read all the books. So
I haven't
good
read
show.
the books, but I had once upon a time. I don't know where they got lost or where they might be, but I just reordered the new V, both seasons, and the mini series, the series, and the battle one, the last battle from
The final battle, yeah.
Yes. So I ordered those, and some of them have started coming. So I'm gonna binge watch those soon. Right now I'm binge watching Stargate. I was in the thrift store I go to, and the owner asked me if I like Stargate, and I said, "Oh, I love Stargate." So she said that her husband loves Stargate and she loves Stargate too. So she had a Stargate collection, what I wanted. She goes, she won't charge me. I said, oh, of course I'll take it. So she
Oh yeah.
the box set of SG1. So I've been watching that. I'm in the first season. And of course, I jump back to the movie and also Stargate Origins. I'm watching that too to fill in the blanks as I'm moving forward. So I'm having a great time with that. And
Yeah.
with Stargate, I've talked about how I started the Star Trek organizations. I started a Stargate thing too, but it wasn't a fan convention type of thing. I started doing a science fiction role-playing game, and I started bringing in elements not only from Star Trek, but from like Star Wars. Like I had two campaigns, one called Die Gungan Die, and the other one was called Wookiee Holocaust. Then they fed it into from Star Wars, and then we had the Goa'uld and the Ascended Beings and the Jaffa from Stargate in the campaign too. So people ranging from children to adults would go on Stargate adventures. We call it Stargate Olympus, and I had a website. But then there were two other Stargate Olympuses. Somebody else had started something and trying to make it commercial. They didn't last for very long. They kind of disappeared after a while. And then when they came out with a role-playing game for Stargate, they had a Stargate Olympus in there too. So I'm sure we all influenced each other in one way or another because all our stuff was online. But I want to start that again. I'm doing role-playing games in my community, so I want to make the Stargates available. And so today I wanted to talk a little bit more about Stargate. My favorite is SG1, although I did enjoy Atlantis, Universe, Stargate Infinity. That was the cartoon that they had. And then the webisodes that were Stargate Origins.
Mhm.
And I really liked what they did with the different types of gods, how they had some of them were possessed by primeval snakes with great intelligence, some of them were ascended beings, some of them were aliens, and Greek mythology, the gods and the people that are part of the Olympian story, they have all sorts of different origins and mixed origins. So I felt that in the context of science fiction, that Stargate did that very well. And they had some of the Titans. They had Kronos in there. They had Athena. They had who else? They had Nereus. They had Peleus. They had a Minoan culture. So they had all sorts of Greek mythological things thrown in there. The Greek gods didn't take precedence. They had Hathor, who was Aphrodite. The Greek entities were like kind of like backseat to the Egyptian and then to the Ori, but they were in there as part of the whole mix. So that's what I particularly liked about it. What elements did you like, Brian?
Oh, I liked all the different series. What was cool about it though is how they spun everything, where it was like the gods of human history were actually these aliens that, like you said, had been taken over by snakes or whatever with the Goa'uld. But they spun it into the different cultures and civilizations where, as you said, they had some Egyptian, they had Sumerian, they had Mayan, they had Greek and Roman. They had a little bit of everything.
Mhm.
And it worked together, I guess, to keep the Jaffa enslaved, keep the galaxy under their thumb, so to speak. And then, like everything else, here comes those pesky humans that have to stick their noses into everything and try to break it all up. So, I like how that worked.
I liked how that worked too, and I liked the fact that even though the Stargate officers were preachy about unified planets, they came from a planet which is ours, which is far from unified, which is a very contentious planet that they wouldn't have wanted anything to do with as they travel through space and time.
Yeah, and I like the fact that when the team would go out and meet these other cultures, they were far from perfect. It wasn't like watching Trek, where here's your, and I hate to talk bad about Trek, but here's your high and mighty prime directive. Can't interfere with the culture, but we end up doing it anyway.
Yes.
And here's this picture perfect utopian society that's supposed to set the example for the rest of the galaxy. Meanwhile, you've got SG-1 showing up, where you've got the neaky or the nerdy geeky guy, you've got the outcast alien, you've got the nerd scientist, and then of course you've got O'Neill being the world's biggest smart mouth with everything. So, you know, he kind of jumps in, and if there's anybody who is absolutely not perfect, it's O'Neill.
Dean Anderson, Richard Dean Anderson did a great job with. I liked him better than Kurt Russell in the movie. I like his interpretation of O'Neill.
Yeah, well, Richard Dean Anderson had more time to develop the character. You know, that with O'Neill only having less than 2 hours to play O'Neill, and he was playing him more like the hard military officer who just lost his kid, and you know, it was almost unemotional, so to speak. But here's Richard Dean Anderson coming in, and the first thing he does is go off on this long dissertation about how he lost his kid and whatnot. But he was very emotional about it and didn't like civilians, didn't like this, didn't like that. But the minute Hammond says, "Oh, I'm going to send this bomb through and hopefully kill all the aliens," well, you can't do that because there's a human civilization with women and children on the other side. It just kind of spun the whole, you know, military thing following orders on its head, where O'Neill's like, "No, you're not going to do that," because I wasn't quite truthful in my report.
Yes, I watched that episode today, actually. And this Stargate was very anti-authority, even though they were within a very highly authoritarian and structured structure with a very clear chain of command, because it was military. They didn't respect the chain of command very much.
They respected Hammond because Hammond would go to bat for them, and he was more or less the father figure with everything. He'd give them orders, sure. He was the general, of course. But if somebody from the higher ups, whether it was the president or Senator Kinsey, who Ronnie Cox plays a great villain, by the way, you know, if it was one of them saying, "Hey, you need to do this," and they didn't agree with it, they'd either bend orders or do something totally different, and Hammond would back them all the way.
Definitely. And Tina, what did you like about Stargate? What are your favorite aspects of it?
Well, of course, being in the a little bit more than amateur archaeologist, Egyptologist, I really enjoyed the first movie. I was like, wow, I want to be this guy, except I stink at language. And then when SG-1 came out, it was like, ooh. In fact, there's a sculptor. We got to get a picture of this and send it to you. Brian says all he needs is a DLD.
A DHD.
I always mess that up. He always gets on to me about that. A DHD, when you put it in front of there you go. You got Stargate. It really looks so much like this. And I really love the character development as the series started. And then it started incorporating so many different theories, aspects, everything else, in a way to me surpassed Star Trek. Because again, you got your almighty prime directive, but yet they seem to break that prime directive on a daily basis. They're kind of going in, feeling it out, and just rolling from there. And then progressing to Atlantis, to Infinity, and everything else. We're expanding more into that. We're also expanding not only into the metaphysical with the physical, with the evidence and everything, but we're also connecting all that. And I think if there was something like that actually did happen, it would connect people more. I mean, when they first found out that mitochondrial DNA that linked one person, one woman, to everything, I'm thinking, okay, great. We all have something in common, so maybe that might just be the thing to make. But no, I mean, we're still fighting, we're still warring, we're still fighting. We're not expanding ourselves. And Stargate, again, was another brilliantly written. Well, there was a few episodes I really did. But like everybody, you know, you like episodes, you don't like episodes. But
Of course.
the character development and the technology development, the interactions between the different species and peoples and everything, it was really fantastic to see. And I think next to Babylon 5, I mean, that's been one of the best written series I've seen.
Yeah, we'll talk about Babylon 5 on another day. I have a lot to say about that, and I'd like to hear what you guys think about Babylon 5. And plus the new Babylon 5 that started with the cartoon, and let's see where it goes from there. But again, that's another episode. Ham, how about you? What did you like about Stargate, and which Stargates did you like the best?
Okay, like Tina, I'm sort of an armchair archaeologist. I get 3 archaeology magazines. I read everything on Facebook, and a lot of the armchair archaeologists on there have nothing but opinions, and I don't learn much from them. But the writers of Stargate had to have one heck of a research team in order to bring these things to light on a TV series. And say just 80% of what they discovered never could make it to the screen. If they did it now, was it like 20, 30 years later? Maybe less. Anyway, if they did it now with all the technology we have, it would be like a super awesome remake of Stargate. The science that was behind it, like the portals, I know they didn't get from science fiction, because I have some esoteric books here that describe the different portals and how they're placed
Yes.
in various locations throughout the galaxy. So I know that they got that from another resource. I like the science, I like the archaeology. I go as far back as the Anunnaki, who are here evidently like anywhere from 250 to 450,000 years ago. The myth is that they created the humans to mine all the gold that the earth was producing. And then they botched it up, and they had to start all over again with new creations, new miners. As far as I know, humans are good for solving problems. And I got this from Julian May's series. I don't know if you are familiar with Julian May.
Not offhand, but if you say a few titles, I might be. Are you guys familiar with Julian May?
Is he the one that wrote The Many Colored Land of the Golden Torque?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, and she wrote 5 others that dealt with that. And the psychics that lived in Vermont, like Uncle Rogie and
Oh yeah.
Jean de Jean, who dissolved because he was so advanced. And his brother Mark just went back in time 6 million years to see if he could find a resolution so his brother could keep disappearing and could stay in embodiment. It's all of that. And yes, I'm widely read in science fiction. But they also, because also if it has something archaeological in it, I will read it. I don't care how bad it is, because I'm interested in the past very much. And there's an astrological thing that says why I'm that way and in what areas. It's like Jupiter's in Aquarius, and I'm interested in the past a lot, because Aquarius is the future and the past, but not necessarily the present. That would be another sign. So I also discovered the way astrology works. Not how it works, but why it works. And I wrote a 10-page article on it, which I still have yet to present to the world, but took me until I was 72 years old to figure it out. But I had all the resources right there, and I looked at them all and synthesized it. And it's like, hey, science, the premise is nothing exists without physics, even astrology. And I figured out how.
I would love to do a show on that. Are you willing to be asked questions on that?
I would read it to you if you like it, but
That sounds like a yes. Okay. We'll,
Look, why don't I send you a copy? You can read it over, and then you can ask me questions about it. But the listeners would not know all of the stuff that I'd written about, and I do bring up some relevancy to what's in Star Trek and other things, so that people in science fiction conventions can get a grip on it and can understand it.
Perfect, because we mix pop culture with our metaphysical journeys, so that's perfect. In Stargate, the last two seasons, season 9 and season 10, they kind of got the people from Farscape on the show. They had Ben Browder and they had Claudia Black, and they were going to call that Stargate Command, but they kept it SG-1. I think they made a mistake in that. I think they could have just spun it off into a different show, because Stargate SG-1 continued in the two movies, and it had an end, more or less. It left it open-ended, but the story kind of finished. If they had changed things up in a Stargate Command, that would have been like the hub show, I think, and all the other shows could have been branches. So they could have had Stargate Command. If they wanted to finish SG-1, they had 10 years of it plus two movies. Then they still had Atlantis, which didn't end. It totally open-ended. And then they had Stargate Universe, and then they had the cartoon, which nobody quite knows how it fits in with the continuity or if it fits in the continuity, but it's an interesting story nonetheless. And also, did you guys know that they continued Atlantis in books? And
Oh, I did not know.
yes, I found out about them recently. One of the hosts that I had interviewed one of the authors for that on the show. So I've been sending away for the books, and it tells you what happened after the TV closing where Atlantis came to Earth. And then for 8 books, it continues the story. It's called the Legacy Stargate Atlantis Legacy series.
Oh,
I'll have to look that up.
we're gonna write that down. Stargate Legacy Atlantis series.
Yes, Stargate Atlantis. And then there's a 3-book series of anthology stories that seems fairly new. It's called Stargate SG-1 Atlantis Traveler's Tales. And that's each book has around 10 stories in it, written by different authors who wrote these Stargate books. And it focuses on different characters, like even Todd. There's like a chapter on Todd and what happened with him. So I'm reading that now as well.
Mhm.
I hadn't been aware that they continued publishing books, and that the books are tying the universe together.
Yeah, I knew there was talks in at one point that they were going to do an Atlantis movie to
Yes.
finish everything off. And then that was when MGM went bankrupt and Sci-Fi Channel said they didn't want to throw the money at it because they were still throwing money at, I think it was Battlestar at that point, that they didn't have the budget to do both. So it was one or the other. And they figured SG-1 and Atlantis had run their course. But Joe Flanagan, that played Colonel Shepard in Atlantis, he keeps poking around every once in a while trying to buy the rights to it so they can actually finish the show.
That'd be great. It's like the guy who played Apollo, I'm forgetting now, in the original
Richard Hatch,
yes, on the original Battlestar Galactica, and he played
Apollo.
the rebel guy on the
Tom Zarek.
yes, Tom Zarek. Yeah, he was trying to get Galactica to move forward, and they actually filmed like clips from the proposed episodes that they were going to do, and it divided the fans, and there was a lot of ill will initially toward the reimagined Galactica, but then they embraced him, and the fans eventually embraced it.
Yeah, I think that was the problem with the new Galactica is people were going into it expecting the old one more or less to be redone to modern standards with no changes or anything else. And then when Ronald D. Moore came out and said, okay, well, Starbuck's going to be a woman and Boomer's going to be a woman, and it's going to be set with more or less modern technology. And it would be like, what if all this happened to us tomorrow?
Right.
Instead of, the more, I don't want to call it sci-fi fantasy, but that's basically what the original was. It was more grounded realism.
I like both iterations of it, and the third iteration was going to be something reinvented, also different from the first two. But they were saying that they were going to somehow explain all the different Galacticas in the movie, but like you said, that didn't happen. And you brought up an interesting point that I wanted to go on, but now it's escaping my mind. So if I remember, we'll get back to it. It had something to do with something you said, which was brilliant. Or I thought it was brilliant anyway.
Okay.
Now, if Stargate comes back, would you prefer it to be a reinvention like Galactica was, a re-envisioning, or would you prefer that it embrace all that happened so far, the movie, the webisodes, the different television shows, and take place in that universe? I personally would prefer if they didn't reinvent it, if they kept it in the same universe, because you have like over 15 years worth of episodes and that gave like a really good backstory and you had beloved characters. So I prefer if they did that rather than just recasting everybody and telling the same story from the beginning.
I'm kind of mixed emotions about that because, like with everything else that tries to come back as a reboot, you have to have that knowledge of the backstory as a fan to understand all the little nuances of it. And if you've never watched the original story or never watched 15 years worth of series or whatever, you're not going to get all that. You're going to go, who are these people and why are they doing what they're doing? And where does all this history come from? Now, that being said, if they turn around and more or less start it over, they could do it in such a way where it's, again, X number of years later. The Stargate program is now more or less ingrained in the public knowledge, so it's not a secret anymore. But, people still aren't going off world or doing whatever. It's still controlled by the military. But they could have in the first couple of episodes or a movie or something like that to bring everybody up to speed on what went before and how the humans inserted themselves more or less into intergalactic politics by taking on all these all-powerful aliens and more or less winning, and then jump in with a new team and have appearances by some of the legacy characters, maybe not as main characters, but enough to know that they're there. The SGC is still there. All the problems they faced and solved or faced and didn't solve are still there, and build on this new team. And every once in a while have one of the legacy characters come in to lend their expertise and just kind of spin it that way. Sort of like Next Generation did at the beginning. You had the new team, but you also had McCoy pop in. You had mentions of the old Enterprise. You had Scotty and Spock in later episodes. So there's ways to do that where you could incorporate both versions of it and still make it work.
Very true. And they had him coming into some of the books, and they had Kirk in some of the books, and Star Trek also an incarnation of him in the Next Generation universe. So they did their best. That's a good approach. Tina, what do you think?
Well, Brian and I, we kind of speak one mind about this. That's something we talk about all the time. And when we started with the Kelvin universe of Star Trek, how they were going to be doing things and everything, and you see a total reinvention of what made it classic, and trying to go that way. And neither that it wasn't the same impact. And if you want to grab these new people that have never even heard of Stargate or seen Atlantis or anything of that nature, if you try to go back and reinvent, you lose them. I mean, it's like Brian said, put a little bit in the future where it's still run by the military. It's a open secret, but yet we have to have civilian contractors, so we have still civilians in the military going through this. Like class coming out of the Space Force, they're joining SB1, they're like a data climate, going on from there.
Thank you. And Pam, what do you think?
I think just doing it over with the same kind of episodes, I don't think it serves the science fiction community that well, because the science fiction community keeps up on science innovations, technology, even AI, which probably can be used to transport some of the former into the current episodes if they make them. American TV likes to recapture what was successful once. And in doing so, I think they make a mistake. If they did Stargate, there is so much more that was discovered in the past 20 years that, yes, it could be an open secret, so to speak, because there are portals we've been discovering in various continents at this point in time. And these would probably have more relevance than just a made up Stargate with old hieroglyphs on it. Just, turn it like a codex and just see what you jump through. It's like they would have to know at this point what they're jumping to. There'd be so much more background that the researchers would have to do in order to make this very plausible. We're turning from science fiction into reality
Yes.
the further we progress in time. And I think it would be a mistake to redo, as it were. And yes, it would bring back a sentimental memory or two, but humans, they know what's going on and they're telling it through stories, and we have to pay attention to that.
Yes, Star Trek, for instance, was very prophetic, and we have replicators now that can make food as well as parts for engines and all sorts of other things.
Yeah, 3D printers.
Yes, and we have devices that could scan you and tell what your temperature is and how your blood sugar's doing and things like that. And we had flip phones, which are the first thing, and they were like the communicators. So yeah, the science fiction of yesterday wouldn't work because the technology we have now is superior to what they had imagined. And a lot of the scientists that created this for real, a lot of the engineers created for real, were emulating what they grew up with on Star Trek. So I'm sure that's true of every science fiction show. The possibilities that it opens up and frees the imagination to led to actual inventions that surpassed the fictive presentation of it and made it into a reality. So I think science fiction is kind of like prophecy, except it's not, this is going to happen, nothing else can happen. It opens up the door to possibilities, seeing things in new ways and approaching problems in new ways, and that makes it real. Not that this is a vision and either this will happen or it'll happen because we haven't done something or because we did something. It's not etched in stone, and it's not a matter of religion or belief. It's just, again, endless possibilities, frees your imagination. And then if the imagination inspires you, it creates certain things, or also it mirrors certain things that other people can't see. Like right now we have politically, Star Wars predicted what's going on in our society right now with what was going on in the Senate and the prequels and things like that. And it's very uncanny. Other science fiction did as well, years before anybody thought that anything like this could happen here. And now it's become part of our reality, and will we heed the warnings of the fiction or not? Well, that remains to be seen. And on that happy note, our time is running out. Brian, how can people find you and your comic book store and learn of your very many adventures in science fiction and other spheres?
Best way is on Facebook. I'm there under my own name and under the store name, Comics, Cards, and Stuff. So that's probably about the easiest way to get a hold of me.
Thank you very much for being part of today's discussion. And again, you're an awesome individual. Tina, how about you?
Same here. Tina, under my name, Chandler, on Facebook, or us71832@yahoo.com.
Thank you very much. You're awesome as well. And you're the only roller derby queen that I know. Many people, many different types of people over the years, but you're the first I met and still the only one.
Oh, thank you. I'll have to introduce you to a lot more sometime.
I look forward to it.
Okay.
And Pamela, Sorcerer Supreme.
Oh, good Lord.
How
Don't
about
give
you?
me titles, oh, for God's sake.
You got a tiara?
I'm just Pam. That's it, just Pam.
Just Pam. How can people enter your world and find out more about what you're doing?
The best way is through email, pjfirst Fernsler, Fernsler, @outlook.com.
Thank you so much. You know that I think you're awesome as well. So I'm very blessed to be able to talk to such awesome and creative people. And I'll be contacting everybody within a week to try to schedule some of the possible shows we talked about today. Until that time, again, thank you. I wish you success in all your upcoming endeavors, and I look forward to our next conversation.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
You're welcome, and thank you. And this will be up sometime tomorrow.
All
Sounds
right.
good.
Hey, good night, everybody.
Good night.
Night.
And now I'm getting confused by the buttons. So let's see.
Yeah, me too.